The most dangerous thing Ferrari did in Barcelona was not beat Mercedes. It made people believe again. And in Formula One, belief is not a small thing. Belief changes the garage. It changes the drivers. It changes the pressure on rivals. It changes how every upgrade, every pit call, and every radio message feels. A few weeks ago, the conversation around Lewis Hamilton was almost insulting. Can he still do it? Has Ferrari made a mistake? Is this dream already turning into one of those romantic Formula One experiments that looks beautiful in the announcement video and painful on track? Then Barcelona happened. And suddenly, the same people who were questioning whether Hamilton could win another race are now asking whether Hamilton and Ferrari can actually drag themselves into a 2026 title fight. That is how quickly Formula One changes. One Sunday, you are finished. The next Sunday, you are a genius again. But here is the part many people are missing. Barcelona was not just about Hamilton proving he still has the magic. We already knew that. Even if some people needed a reminder with fireworks, champagne, and a Ferrari radio message. The real story is that Ferrari may have finally given him a car that does not fight him back. That is the difference. Because for the first part of the season, the SF26 looked like one of those cars that had speed hidden inside it, but only on its own terms. Fast in one session, confusing in another, promising on Saturday, annoying on Sunday. The kind of car that makes fans say, "We're close," while secretly wondering if they have heard that sentence every year since the invention of carbon fiber. Ferrari did not lack hope. Ferrari lacked control. And Barcelona was the first time this season where the car, the driver, the strategy, and the upgrades all started speaking the same language. That is why this win matters. Not because Hamilton stood on the top step, but because Ferrari did not look lucky. They looked organized. And for Ferrari fans, that might be the biggest plot twist of all. Because, let's be honest, Ferrari has had fast cars before. Ferrari has had emotional wins before. Ferrari has had weekends where everyone says, "This is it. The comeback starts now." Then 2 races later, the tires vanish, the strategy department starts doing abstract art, and the fans are staring at the timing screen like it personally betrayed them. So the question after Barcelona is not, was Ferrari fast? They were. The real question is much more serious. Was Barcelona a one-week miracle? Or did Ferrari finally solve enough of the SF26 to become a real problem for Mercedes? Because if this was just the perfect track, the perfect safety car, the perfect strategy window, and the perfect Hamilton performance, then it was a great win, but not a championship warning. But if this was the first real sign that Ferrari's development path is working, then Mercedes has a much bigger issue than one lost race. They may have a title fight on their hands. And the most uncomfortable part for Mercedes is that Hamilton did not win this race by doing something wild and desperate. He won it like a driver who understood exactly what he had underneath him. That is what should worry everyone else. Hamilton's critics wanted Barcelona to be a referendum on age, motivation, and whether he could adapt to Ferrari. Instead, it became a reminder that Formula One drivers do not suddenly forget how to win. They need the machinery to let them show it. Earlier in the season, Hamilton looked like a man trying to negotiate with a car that had its own agenda. The SF26 had pace, but it was not giving him the confidence he needed in the areas where he has always been most dangerous. Hamilton is at his best when he can attack the braking zones, lean on the front end, rotate the car, and trust the rear not to abandon him like a bad teammate in a group project. Barcelona gave him that trust. Not perfectly, but enough. And in Formula One, enough is sometimes all a champion needs. The first clue came before the race even started. Qualifying showed that Ferrari was no longer simply hanging around the front hoping Mercedes made a mistake. Hamilton missed pole by almost nothing, but the important detail was where the time was being won and lost. Ferrari was strong in the corners that expose a car's aerodynamic balance. It was carrying speed. It was stable through long radius sections. It was giving Hamilton a platform he could actually attack with. That matters, because Barcelona is not a track where you can fake a good car. It punishes weakness. If your balance is wrong, the tires tell everyone. If your aerodynamics are unstable, the stopwatch snitches immediately. If your car eats its tires, Barcelona does not keep secrets. And yet Ferrari looked alive. The problem was still there on the straights. Mercedes continued to have the advantage in efficiency and energy deployment. Ferrari still suffered from clipping at the end of the lap. That final stretch cost Hamilton speed and probably cost him pole. But weirdly, that almost made Ferrari's performance more impressive. Because the message was clear. Ferrari was no longer missing the whole picture. They were missing details. And details can be developed. A fundamentally broken car is a nightmare. A fast car with specific weaknesses is a project. That is the difference Barcelona revealed. The upgrade package was not just decoration. Ferrari came with changes aimed at the areas that had been haunting them: airflow stability, tire degradation, rear grip, and consistency across a race distance. And this is where the story becomes bigger than one Hamilton victory. The front wing changes were about more than front-end bite. In modern Formula One, the front wing sets up almost everything behind it. It decides how cleanly the air moves around the tires, how well the floor works, and whether the rear of the car gets the kind of airflow it needs to stay stable. Ferrari's earlier problem was not simply that the car lacked pace, it was that the pace was too fragile. Fast when conditions were right. Difficult when the tires started sliding. Awkward when the track evolved. Sensitive when pushed too hard. Barcelona suggested Ferrari had started calming the car down. And that is exactly what Hamilton needed. The side pod and floor changes were just as important. Ferrari was trying to manage the airflow around the car more cleanly and protect the diffuser from turbulence created by the rear tires. That sounds technical, but the result is simple. More stable rear grip, better tire life, more confidence for the driver, and fewer Sundays where Ferrari fans begin the race with hope and end it learning new breathing exercises. This is why the win felt different. Hamilton did not have to nurse a wounded car for 66 laps. He could manage, attack, defend, and respond. That is what championship-level drivers do when the package underneath them finally gives them options. The strategy made that even clearer. Ferrari starting Hamilton on the soft tire was aggressive. It was not reckless, but it carried risk. The soft could give him the launch and early pace, but if he abused it, the race could fall apart quickly. And this is where Hamilton's experience mattered. He did not panic. He did not turn the opening stint into a highlight reel just to prove a point. He controlled the tire, protected the car, and waited for the race to come toward him. That is the part casual critics often miss. Winning in Formula One is not always about being spectacular every lap. Sometimes the most impressive thing a driver can do is not overdrive a fast car. Hamilton understood the assignment. Antonelli applied pressure early, and Mercedes still looked dangerous. But Hamilton never gave them the mistake they needed. He kept the Ferrari alive, kept himself in the strategy window, and forced Mercedes to keep responding. That is when the race slowly started tilting red. Not dramatically at first, just enough. A tenth here, a cleaner exit there, a tire advantage waiting in the background, a pit call that suddenly looked smarter than it did 10 laps earlier. This is how races are stolen at the highest level, not with one heroic moment, but with a series of small decisions that leave the rival wondering when exactly they lost control. And Mercedes did lose control. Not completely, but enough. Russell had pace, but the Mercedes advantage was not the comfortable advantage it had looked like earlier in the season. The hard tire phase exposed that. Once the balance became more difficult, Ferrari was close enough to punish it. That is the important phrase. Close enough. Ferrari does not need Mercedes to collapse every weekend. Ferrari just needs to be close enough that Mercedes cannot afford an average day. Barcelona was the first race where Mercedes looked like it had to be perfect. And it was not. Antonelli's retirement made the damage worse. Suddenly, this was not just a race result. It was a championship swing. Points lost, momentum lost, pressure added. And Formula One pressure is a strange thing. It makes smart teams sharper, but it also makes small problems louder. Before Barcelona, Mercedes could look at Ferrari and see a threat in theory. After Barcelona, they had to see a threat in the mirrors. Meanwhile, Ferrari had its own internal story playing out with Charles Leclerc. Leclerc's weekend was a reminder that Ferrari's progress is real but not clean. Starting lower than he should have after qualifying trouble, he had to fight through a race that could have been very different with a better Saturday. His move on Piastri showed confidence. His pace showed Ferrari had improved. But his afternoon also showed why championships are not built on one car having one great day. Ferrari still needs both sides of the garage operating at maximum level. That is where the team decision became fascinating. When Hamilton had the stronger pace, Ferrari asked Leclerc to let him through. Simple on paper, very uncomfortable in real life. Because Ferrari is not just managing lap times, Ferrari is managing egos, history, fan bases, championship ambitions, and two drivers who both believe they should be the center of the project. But the call was correct. And more importantly, it was decisive. That is not always a word people associate with Ferrari strategy. Barcelona-Ferrari did not look confused. They did not look sentimental. They did not try to please everyone and end up helping no one. They saw the win was possible, and they backed the driver with the pace to take it. That is championship thinking, not friendly thinking, not emotional thinking. Championship thinking. And if Ferrari is serious about 2026, they will need more of that. Then came the moment that made everything click. The virtual safety car after Alonso stopped on track gave Ferrari the opening, and this time they did not hesitate. Hamilton was called in, the stop worked, and Mercedes could not answer in the same way. Now, some people will say Ferrari got lucky. And yes, timing matters in Formula One. Safety cars can change races. Strategy windows can fall into your lap like a gift from the racing gods. But luck only helps if you are close enough to use it. Ferrari had put Hamilton in position to benefit. That is the difference between luck and preparation. A slow car gets a safety car and finishes slightly less embarrassed. A competitive car gets a safety car and wins. Ferrari was competitive. That is the point. The final stint was not about Hamilton proving he could drive fast. It was about proving he could control the race once Ferrari had given him the tools. He did exactly that. Pushed when needed. Protected when needed. Managed the gap. Kept the tires alive. No drama. No panic. No desperate radio messages. Just a 7-time champion finishing the job. And that is why this victory hit differently. It was not chaotic Ferrari. It was not Ferrari surviving Ferrari. It was Ferrari looking like a serious operation. That might be the most shocking part of the whole weekend. Fred Vasseur knew better than to turn one victory into a parade. His message after the race was careful for a reason. Ferrari were not terrible before Barcelona, and they are not champions now. That is the right tone. Because the fastest way for Ferrari to ruin a good moment is to start believing the movie trailer before the season is finished. There are still weaknesses. The straight-line deficit is real. The energy deployment issue matters. Mercedes still has efficiency. The championship gap still exists. And Ferrari still has to prove this package works at other circuits, in other temperatures, with other tire demands, and under the kind of pressure that comes when the world starts expecting wins instead of celebrating surprises. That is the next test. Because winning once changes the question. Winning again changes the championship. Hamilton's victory was emotional, of course. It had to be. A Hamilton-Ferrari win was always going to feel bigger than a normal race result. This was not just another trophy. This was one of those moments that connects childhood dreams, career legacy, and the weight of Formula One history. Hamilton thanking Maranello on the radio was not just a line for the cameras. You could feel what it meant. But emotion alone does not win championships. Ferrari fans know that better than anyone. They have lived through enough. This could be the year, moments to treat hope like a suspicious package. So the smarter reaction is not to declare Ferrari back. The smarter reaction is to say Ferrari has finally given us evidence. Evidence that Hamilton can still win. Evidence that the SF26 can be developed in the right direction. Evidence that Mercedes can be pressured. Evidence that Ferrari's upgrade path may actually be solving the problems that mattered most. And evidence that this partnership is not just a marketing dream wearing red overalls. That is why Barcelona may become one of the most important races of the season. Not because it answered every question, because it created better questions. Can Ferrari fix the energy deployment weakness? Can Leclerc recover enough momentum to make Ferrari a two-car threat? Can Mercedes respond before this becomes a real championship fight? Can Hamilton turn one emotional win into a sustained title push? And most importantly, was Barcelona the beginning of Ferrari becoming dangerous, or just one perfect Sunday where everything finally lined up? That is where the debate begins. Because if you are a Mercedes fan, you can still argue this was track-specific. You can still argue Mercedes has the stronger overall package. You can still say Ferrari benefited from timing, strategy, and circumstances. And honestly, that argument is not crazy. But if you are a Ferrari fan, you finally have something more powerful than blind faith. You have proof of concept. You have a race where the upgrades worked, the driver delivered, the strategy held together, and Mercedes got beaten straight up in the moments that mattered. That is not nothing. That is the kind of win that changes the energy inside a season. Before Barcelona, Hamilton at Ferrari was a beautiful question mark. After Barcelona, it became a warning. Maybe the project is real. Maybe the critics were too quick. Maybe Ferrari did not sign Hamilton for nostalgia. Maybe they signed him because when the car is finally underneath him, he still knows exactly how to break a rival's rhythm, protect a tire, manage a race, and make the pressure feel personal. And that is what Mercedes now has to think about. Because Ferrari does not need to be perfect yet. They just need to keep improving. And if the SF26 has genuinely turned a corner, then Barcelona was not just Hamilton's first big Ferrari statement. It was the first sign that the title fight may be changing shape. So now the whole season has a different feeling. Mercedes still has the advantage in important areas. Ferrari still has work to do. Hamilton still has points to recover. But for the first time, the question is not whether Ferrari can win a race. The question is whether they can make Mercedes nervous every weekend. And if Barcelona was not a one-off, then Mercedes should be nervous. Because once Ferrari starts believing, once Hamilton starts trusting the car, and once Maranello starts seeing that the development path is working, this stops being a comeback story. It becomes a championship threat. So what do you think? Was Barcelona the real beginning of Hamilton and Ferrari's title charge? Or was it just one perfect weekend that made everyone overreact, because Formula One fans have the emotional stability of a soft tire on lap 20? Either way, one thing is clear. The conversation has changed. And for Ferrari, that might be the most important victory of all.